Awesome. Well, welcome everybody. Thank you for coming to Diego's talk. It is my pleasure to introduce to you Diego. Diego did his undergrad at the National University of Colombia, La Universidad Nacional, where he has been working with the bee lab for 5 years. Most of his work has been on systematics of bees, but now he's expanding to working on ecology and conservation. Diego has collaborated in this lab and has like first and middle author publications from his work. And so we're looking forward to what he has to tell us about bees of Colombia. Take it away, Diego.
Thanks, Elisa, for the introduction. Hello, everyone. I am Diego, and I love bees. And today I will talk a little about native bees of Colombia. Okay. The outline will be Colombia, its natural region, ecosystem, and richness in many groups. What are the bees, their ecological role and importance in the land ecosystems, and what do we know about Colombia's bees? And the last one, some works done and in preparation about the bees. Okay, bit of all. We know about the Colombia natural region, ecosystems, and okay, Colombia is a country in the north of South America. It is a tropical country. We can see the equator line here, and it is relatively small, 7 times smaller than Brazil and 4 times smaller than USA, about as big as Texas, and have some particularities like Colombia is the bridge between Central America and the rest of South America, and has the Pacific Ocean and the Sea Caribbean. It is important in the climate of the terrestrial ecosystem adjacent to this. Colombia has a rugged geography. We can find elevation since 0 meters above sea level, about to 6,000 meters. And the most important mountain range in South America is the Andes. And in Colombia, it is divided in 3. Exist other formations with different origins, like the Guayana Chills Formation. It is less in altitude, but it is important for other reasons. Okay, the first mountain range is the West Andes. It is ubicated in the west of the country and has importance in the climate of the Pacific region, and with ocean currents generate very humid region with some precipitations around to 30,000 millimeters per year. It is very high, maybe the highest in the world. The second mountain ridge is the Central Andes, with the western from the Cauca Valley River, and with the last one, the Eastern Andes from the Magdalena River Valley. The Eastern Andes is the most important in the biogeography of different groups, and with the rest of the Andes in South America, general and partner of distribution in different plants and animals, and it is the cis-trans Andean system. In the north of the country, we can find the Sierra Nevada de Santa Marta. It is the highest contrast altitudinal in the world, with elevation since 0 meters above sea level and about to 6,000 meters. And it is important in the climate of the La Guajira, the most acidic region in the country. Okay, Colombia has 5 natural regions. This is formed mainly for the influence of the Andes, and it is the Pacific region. In this we can find tropical humid forest, the Caribe with xeric ecosystems, and the Andes with a mixture of different ecosystems, some restricted to this region. The Orinoquia with savannas, and the most famous, the Amazonia region with tropical humid forests. Also, it is less humid than the Pacific forest. Eder et al. Proposed 311 different ecosystems in Colombia. It is a high number of ecosystems, and I can show you some example, the most important for the bees, or some beautiful for me. The first is the tropical dry forest. It is important for the solitary bees, and we can find in the Caribbean region and some in the interandine valleys. In this, we can find trees with caducifoli. They lose their leaves in one moment in the year. The second ecosystem is the paramo. The paramo is an ecosystem restricted to the Andes, and it is important in the biogeography of different groups because it starts only about 3,000 meters above sea level. The most famous, the tropical humid forest, characterized by canopy and trees with high diameter. And in this case, I bring the example from Baupés, and in this region, we can find other very contrasting ecosystem. It is the emergence of the Guayana Shield. The Guayana Shield is the oldest geological formation in South America and have low soil nutrients levels. Then only we can find bush and herbaceous plants. And the last examples, very contrasting, the La Guajira Desert in the north of the country, the mosaic in Colombia. Unfortunately, I haven't seen bees from this region, but I am sure that be great. And other very contrasting is the volcano. In Colombia, we have some regions with snow in all year, but it is restricted to very high lands. And we can see bees in this. Okay, all these ecosystem and the position in the tropics generate megadiverse in Colombia. And the country is the second most megadiverse country in the world behind to Brazil. But remember, Colombia is 7 times smaller than Brazil. And Colombia has the highest richness in the world of different groups like orchids, birds, and butterflies, and occupies the second and third place in other groups. Most studies indicate that tropical plants are pollinated by insects, mainly by bees. Then the bees are important also in the ecosystem in Colombia. But some people only think in the bowl of the honey and wax, others think in the pollination in crops. Also, they have a value with millions of dollars or billions of dollars. That is really smaller compared with the pollination in natural ecosystem. Okay, what are the bees? The bees are a group of insects in the order Hymenoptera, in the Apocrita, belong to the Apoidea superfamily, and with Crisidoidea and Vespoidea form the Aculeata group or the quads with a sting. The superfamily Apoidea is conformed by the carnivorous quads, Specides, and the bees, and the relations between the species are constantly changed. But San et al. In 2018 and in 2021 proposed a new phylogeny with some changes in the status taxonomic from some groups, but the important for the study of the bees is the position of the sister group. If we know what is the sister group, we can generate hypotheses from evolution, and we can polarize the characters. They found Amoplanide like the sister group of the bees, and it is interesting because they believe a transition between the carnivorous behavior to herbivorous behavior that occur in bees, because Amoplanide feed on thrips and the thrips feed on pollen. Then they propose some ancestors starts to eat the pollen and others continues at the thrips. And in this way, generates two different evolution lanes, the carnivorous lineage and the bees herbivorous lineage. Then the Anthophila, the bees are in Anthophila, is clearly groups natural, supported by synapomorphism morphological. For example, the hind basitarsus wider than the rest of the tarsus, the presence of basitibial plate with some secondary loose, the presence of plumose hairs, and some other synapomorphism molecular and ecological. But the most important is that depends on floral resource to feed their larvae. This generates some relation really interesting, like the pollination in many plants, but in some case we can see modifies, like in the Rediviva bee, we have the front leg very modified for access the oil generated in the Diasca flower. But the bees are not that herbivorous than we believe. And we can see this in the work of Stefan et al. In 2019. They found the bees, in fact, eat a mixture of pollen and microbiota, mainly yeast. Then the bees must be considered omnivorous, or even in some groups, it is more closely to carnivorous. Now the number in the world, the species of bees are around 20 to 25,000 species. In the nootropics are 6,000, and in Colombia the number is around 900 to 1,500. Then is Colombia a mega diverse country in the number of bee species, like it is in the number of different groups of plants and ecosystem. For answer this question, I check the work of orchid et al. And I create this table with this data. They generate a big data set with different results from bees of the whole world. And I create this table with the 5 countries with more species in all the world. And Colombia is here with a low number and in the position 37. And the other way, Danny Vélez estimate a number of 105,000 bee species in the country. And also, Colombia doesn't come close to the top of the table, even with this data. But what is this? This occurred because a partner, before reporter for other authors, but or et al. Found the same result. The bees have a bimodal latitudinal gradient, and the regions are in the temperate areas in the north and in the south. And Colombia is here in very tropical area, far away from the temperate areas. However, Colombia is a country with many different bee behaviors. I will show some example for demonstrate this. We have 5 for the 7 stem families from the bees. The first is the Coletidae family or cellophane bees. They have the gloss point and the gloss bifurcate or truncate, and use this for recover the cells with a substance similar to the cellophane and avoid the growth of microbes. In Colombia, we can find other genera. We can find different genera, for example, the famous coletes or ileus. Ileus doesn't have a scope, and the pollen is carried in the crop. We have Tyloglossa. It is Tyloglossa has interesting behavior because it is crepuscular, only visit the flowers in the evening and in the early morning, and it is bigger than coletes with some metallic coloration. The second family is Andrenity. In this, we can find different behaviors. For example, the subfamily Panurgini is oligolectic to some plants. I can show some of these families, and I bring to you an example with a very Colombian name. It is Andinopanurgus bachue, described by Engel, Gonzalez and Engel, Andinopanurgus because it is restricted to the Andes, and Panurgus for the family. And the specific epithet is named after the Muiscas goddess, Bachue. The Muiscas were indigenous people from Colombia, famous for the legend del Dorado, of El Dorado. And they believe Bachue was the mother of the humanity. Other example is the genus Zenitia. In this, we can find particular partner of distribution. Before, only we know species in the south of South America, but in work we do with Professor Engel and Gonzalez from the Kansas University and Professor Rodolfo, we found 2 new species in the north of South America, but we don't know whether or why the distribution is not continuous. This pattern occurs in other species, like in Acanthopoeum, the genera are restricted to the genus are restricted to the south of South America, but one species occurs in Argentina and in Colombia. And other species is endemic to the Magdalena Valley River in the other side of the Eastern Andes. Other example occurs in Trigonopedia from other family, like it is in Argentina and Brazil, and in the north of the country and Venezuela. The last family from short tongue is Alictid or sweet bees. In this, we can find genus with different morphologies in the same species, other like Megalopta with a nocturnal behavior, other like Sphecodes. Sphecodes is kleptoparasitic. The kleptoparasitiums consist in one female put its eggs inside the cell to the other female, and the female or their larvae parasitic kill the host and the larvae host. Most of the species is underground and a few on dry branches, and some genera like Sphecodes are kleptoparasitic, but in others, like the subgenus Epileus, show several occurrences of primitive sociability and kleptoparasites. Altum, it is the second most diverse family in the country and presents many behaviors. It is less known, and we don't know anything about the biology, except for 2 species. Then the large tongue, the Megachilidae, commonly known as left-quarter bees, mason bees, or carter bees. In this, the bees are solitary and they use different kind of resorts for build their nests. In this case, and a female of Megachile build their nest with leaves, and in this case, a female of Antidium collect hairs from the plants, and the bees will urinate in pre-existing cavities, roll the leaves or of the hairs, and they looks like this. One of these is a cell, but they can build this with leaves, with resines, or with mud. In this family, we can find again the kleptoparasite team's behavior, but in this case, it's interesting because Oplostelis show kleptoparasite team's type larve open and causes the larve kleptoparasitic, the first of the second stage, have sclerotized the mandibles and the head, and with this kill the host larvae. And in Oplostelis, of course, other interesting behavior, it is they can kleptoparasitic other families. In this case, they can parasitic Euglossa from the Apidae family. Cambia. Okay, the last family, the family Apidae. There is the biggest family in the world and in Colombia. Then I can only show some examples, but the most interesting for me is in this family, we can find different levels of sociability. We can find solitary, eusocial, and even in the same individual present different social levels in its life. The first example, the subfamily Psilocopine and Psilocopine or the carpenter's bees build their nest in wood, but we can find two genera, some small and really beautiful coloration, Seratina, and Neopsilocopa, more bigger. The Glossini or the orchid bees, I think that is the perfect for attract the attention of the public. And in this, we can find interesting behaviors. For example, the males collects fragrance from different resorts, like orchids, but they can visit other plants, species, and compete with other males with a perfume elaborated with this fragrance. And in this, we can find the most diverse genera. It is Euglossa. We can find again kleptoparasites in two genera, Xarete and Agle. And other interesting behavior is presented by the orchid and consists in a prezygotic barrier because the orchid puts the polinium in a specific morphology of the bee, and the bee can, if visit other species of the orchid, can fertilize this orchid with the polinium. But if I take with my hands the polinium and put in the other species, I generate an hybrid. Okay, the bumblebees, less diverse than in temperate zones, but that is important in highlight ecosystem, mainly in the plants who require buzz pollination. And it is interesting in the biogeography. We can see two clades in Colombia, long face and short face, and this show a double colonization by the genus in South America. And in the phylogeography, we can find different evolution lanes in the mountain range. And with this data, the Professor Rodolfo of National University, we can stop the introduction from of other species of bumblebees like Bombus terrestris or Bombus atratus, Bombus pauloensis from Argentina. And the last tribe, Meliponini, the most abundant in the tropics and in Colombia. It is high in sociality like Apis mellifera and have a pantropical distribution. It is important in cultural and social, and we can find a wide range of behaviors. For example, some have associations with termites, like this Tetragonis cangustula. Some obtains honeydew from books, and we can see really interesting behaviors, unique, like the subgenus Necrotrigona. The subgenus obtain the protein resource from flesh. It is unique in all the bees. Other unique behavior is in Scaptotrigona depelis. This species obtain resource protein from fungus. Another example, the last example is the kleptobiotic bees. It is really interesting and occurred 2 times in the natural history, one in the clade of New World and one in the clade of Old World. And we can see in the general Stremelita and Kleptotrigona, and consists in chemistry camouflage and attack. The Stremelita found all nest next to this from the other stingless bees and begin the attack to the far away and continues with the rest, but even leaving enough resource for the restoration of the nest. Then when they end the cycle of attack, they can start again with the fiercely. They have a camouflage strategic, and Vasquez et al. 2022 found difference in the alcance between the Stremelita species, sympatric and similar with its host. It is show a possible specific relationship for avoid competition. And the cuticular chemical profiles vary temporarily, resemble more during the attack with the host, and they don't find what is the way to change this chemistry composition in the time. The stingless bees are important in cultural, and they was used for different indigenous people in Colombia, and some generate unique techniques like the Los Guas techniques. And with this, the indigenous people can build these images with gold, with many details. Others, like the Kogis and the Arahuacos, use the big wax of stingless and charcoal for build the gaita colombiana. Now it is built with plastics. Other indigenous peoples like Uba believe in the bees, believe the bees occupying a central position in their cosmology, because this promote the fertility, the begin and continues the life, and I am sure they had an accurate vision of the pollination. We can see this in their cosmology. And some persons, like some people like Gonzalez and Vélez, honored with some species. The first is Paratrigona uva, with the name of the indigenous people, and the second, Heotrigona cava. I think it is a good name because the Uba's belief in the goddess of the underground was Cava, and the Heotrigonas will their nest underground, but some matters about the level of the soil. In the stingless beekeeping is continued used for different communities. Also, some people have good practice, others have bad practice, like extract colonies from native environments and movement of colonies between different regions, and bad manipulation of the bugs. And this can generate problems for the stingless bees and the bees in general. And this grow up because the trade of bees, the government impulse this activity, like substitution of illegal crops. Although we know all this behavior and the presence of more than 500 bee species in Colombia, we still have a long way to go to know all of them in the country and their distribution, and have taxonomic tools for their identification in order to study their distribution, ecology, and conservation. And we can see this in the maps, again, of the or et al. If we see Colombia, the numbers are really, really low, but we can see this partner, the regions are restricted to the Andes region. And I have to you 3 reasons for this occurs. The first is the sample bias. Is Colombia highlights the most richness R&B species in the country. It is an example of the sample bias. For answer this question, I create this data with the genera reported for Gonzalez and Engel. They found 20 genera and I added 4 more. In the other hand, I show to you the work we are doing in this moment in the laboratory in Baupes region, as well as mentioned before. In this region, we can find tropical humid forests, but we can find emergence of the Guayana chill. We're collecting around 2,000 specimens, and we find 46 genera. Then in only one region of lowlands, we find next to the double number of genera that in all highland mountains reported for Gonzalez and with the new records. And I believe the reason for this is the mainly institutions that do bee research are in the Andean region, some in Bogota, others in Medellin, and this institution restrict the study in the same region. The second reason is the lack of bee data in free database. I did a search in Antophila GBIF, and we found this map with a low number of points. And we did a search in Morris Catalogue and in Discover Live for search the number of genera in the Baupes region, and we find only 5. This really contrasting with the 46 genera found by us. We can also noting there is most of this data. It is if we remove the family Apidae from the search, we can see a very low number of points in all country. And I believe, well, I guess this occurs because the monthly studies are restricted to the family Apidae, to the corbiculare bees. And the last reason, the type of research bees makes in the country. For this reason, I bring the table of Gonzalez et al. They propose different levels of operation, and most of the publication included a list of the specimens in the 19th and the early 2000s, and they don't fit even in the first level. Most recent words are including diagnosis and descriptions, illustrations, and case, and they are in the 4th level of operation. We are on an early stage of the bee knowledge, but there is not because the research one, that is because we have some barriers, like we don't have access to the reference material of material type, and I don't have the resource for elaborate studies with phylogeny, biogeography hypothesis. In this way, I am trying to contribute in different groups. One my works is the revisions of the genus Lustrumelita. In Colombia, in 2013, we have only 3 species, and these are restricted to the Andes region. But in our work, we found 11 species, 2 new species, and we can find different points in all the country. Also, we can see the same reasons I said before. The monthly records are from the Andes region, and this occurs because I can only have the chance to review the collections in Bogota. The work is the revision of other night genera, again of Meliponini. We found 31 species, 2 new species, 7 new records for the country, but the most interesting is the mosaic of the diversity in the Tiber, in the Tribe. Colombia shares species with Central America, with Brazil and other countries, with Amazonas basin, with Ecuador in the Chocó geographic, with Venezuela in the savannas of Orinoquia, and Colombia has genera and many endemic species in different natural regions. This is interesting because we found different partners of distribution, but we can prove the phylogenic hypothesis. Okay, other word is some new records from megachiliid bees. We found some new records, but we don't have confirmed the taxonomic identity from different species. And the last work, the Antofrag Walteri work, I am working with Professor Melissa Guzman of the University of Southern California, and we can see the variation of the population in the time, because this species is oligolectic in Salvia bogotense, and it is restricted to xeric ecosystem from the Western Eastern Andes in Colombia. Okay. I am indeed with Melissa, Natalia Flores, and Nicolas for their help with their the English in this presentation, and with the Laboon, the time of IADBs for the opportunity, mainly with Neil, and to my parents, two main source of financiation and support.
Thank you, Diego. This was great. I think we're happy to take any questions. You can either write them in the chat and I can read them out, or you can unmute yourself and then just ask. And I'm available for any misunderstandings or translations that may be needed. Thank you, Diego.
Thank you.
Any questions?
Yeah, sure. I'll ask one. So that arid area to the north, are there plans to do some sampling there?
The Mosaic region in the
Yep.
La Guajira, we don't have specimens, but we have a specimen from other xeric region in the north of the country. Okay. From this region, the Santa Marta and Cartagena. In this we can find, for example, Trigonopedia. I don't remember the genus, but the epithet specific is Rosella from the Coletidae family.
Loncopria.
Loncopria rosella.
So you can, it would be great to plan a trip after a good rainfall.
Yeah.
In that peninsula that sticks out to the north there, what time of year does it rain? And is the rain predictable? Like in lots of deserts, it might normally rain over a couple of months, but then it might not rain at all for years.
No, I don't understand the question.
Oh.
Que si, primero, o sea, que si hay viajes planeados a La Guajira, a la península de La Guajira que está ahí, y que cómo es la precipitación, o sea, qué tanto llueve, si es predecible o cuando, porque Lawrence estaba diciendo que sería bueno ir a hacer un muestreo después de una lluvia grande, entonces, que si sabes como cuál es el patrón de precipitación en La Guajira.
Okay, Lawrence, we don't have plans to trip to the Guajira, but I love the area to go to. And the precipitation, we can find a bimodal partner of precipitation in La Guajira, and the high precipitation occurs in the early year, in the March to April month. And the second, it is low than in the March, it occurs in September.
Okay, so a trip there in April or May would be a good idea.
Okay.
I echo Lawrence's interest. I talked with Alan Smith Pardo a number of times about working there, in part because the flora is apparently similar to that of the Caribbean islands. And it's thought that it was seeded by birds flying across. So it might be a very different flora that would, in addition to the xeric environment. Anyway, well done, your presentation, very well.
Thanks, Terry.
Jason, go for it.
Hi, I really enjoyed the talk. I was just wondering if any like foreign bee taxonomists have visited the collections there and helped identify the material that's accessible.
¿Entendiste?
No.
Que si taxonomistas o taxónomos extranjeros han visitado las colecciones y han ayudado a las identificaciones.
Okay. Yes, some like for example, Michael Enkel, Gabriel Melo, Felipe Vivallo, Fernando Zanella, Ricardo Ayala, but yep.
Particular interest in Lasio Blossom, so I was just kind of curious if anyone's if like anyone like Moray had ever come and looked at Colombian Lasio Blossom there.
Que si alguien ha ido a visitarlas, a revisarlas de Lasio Blossom.
No, but okay, I only know the name of one species in all the country, Lasioglossum delictus santafensis. I don't know anything who comes to review the Lasioglossum. Anyone have the brave to review Lasioglossum?
Diego, I think I can help out. I know Jason Gibbs' email, and if you email him, he'll probably come down.
Okay, yeah, I will be email to Jason. I
And
think
bring all of his graduate students and everything and just do it.
Maybe when the pandemic is over.
I just looked it up. I think there's a total of 18 B records that I could find either on GBIF or SCAN for that northern peninsula. And I just can't help but think that there'd be quite a few, even though it's a small area, that there would be quite a few new species for Colombia you would find there. But with having 310 or however many ecosystems, it's a challenge to get them all.
But in this 311 ecosystem, we have a terrestrial and aquatic ecosystem. And the number maybe of terrestrial ecosystem is around 200 or 250. But me preguntó algo más, me dice qué pena. ¿No? Ok.
Ya, que sería chévere ir a mostrar allá. Go for it.
Well, I just wanted to say that, I mean, what I'm trying to help do is to create this Western Hemisphere just species list, where if all we do is be able to know where most of the bee species in North America and South America exist, then I will die a happy person. And that is very, very challenging. But at the same time, I just got to say that I'm very, very encouraged because of the people that have been willing to jump in and sort of join this cause. And and I can just say that I'm just so far I'm really happy with the fact that we've in the United States we've connected with Mexico and now Guatemala, and hopefully people like Oscar and Reme can help us connect farther south, and that the work that Diego, you and Rodolfo are doing will help us make that connection. And then Lawrence and other people with connections in Chile and Brazil, whatever, that within a year from now, we can have quite a few pieces in place. And I am really impressed because for Colombia, just when you look at just total specimen records produced to GBIF, in terms of relative size of your country, Colombia is #1 in South America for insects. So Brazil has more specimens, but like you said, it's a much bigger country. And really where I see that we have to really make progress are in, and I was shocked by this. So Ecuador, Peru, Bolivia, Paraguay, and Uruguay. So GBIF just sent me the records. None of those countries have made public records available for bees. And so I'm hoping that the records that you've shared with Melissa, we can get that into a publication and make it public and use you guys as a model for what we would hope to see would happen in some other South American countries.
You might consider connecting with Alan Smith, Pardo, because he has all those records from his studies when he was a graduate student there. And I don't know that they were published, or if they were published, I doubt that they were served. But that might be a way to expand the coverage.
Okay, sure. I'm happy to. I put his name. Is that how you? If he's not on the iDigBees list, Terry, could you share your email, his email with me?
Sure. Yeah, I was actually also directing this to Diego as something that you might want to connect with, someone you might want to connect with.
Oh, I'm sorry. So he's in Colombia.
No, he's in the US. He works for APHIS.
Oh, okay.
But he yeah, he
But
has records, I'm sure, and many of which I suspect are not, have never been published.
They don't publish this, but it is really interesting because in only one point they found around 400 species in the Antioquia, and
Right.
400 is really close to the number total of the species in Colombia.
Yeah, that's very impressive. Well done.
Okay, well, we're closing in on the top of the hour. So unless there are any other questions, if you're not on the iDigBees email list, and you would know it if I've sent you an email, please send me an email and I'll add your name on the list so you can hear about things like the next talk, which will be about will be presented by Oscar, who will be talking about Mesoamerican bees, and that'll be, I think, in April. And if you are from a country in South America, or you know somebody that wants to give a talk similar to what Gerardo did for Mexico and Diego did for Colombia, I would be happy to get you on the docket. Okay, with that, I will stop recording and thank everybody for